You're listening to Weird Realities, the destination of choice for those inquisitive minds seeking to find that special place where myth, science, history, and folklore intersect. Where we interview authors, podcasters, content creators, and filmmakers to discuss their work and projects, as well as dive deep into the weird things that capture our imaginations and stimulate our minds. Weird Realities is a Night Callers production made possible by Lauren Smith, producer, with audio and visual by Beaverhook Productions.
Who's asleep amidst the trees? Bats all a swaying in the breeze. But one soul lies anxious, wide awake, fearing all manner of ghouls, hags, and...
Welcome to episode 9 of the Wyrd Ink session. I'm Hadley Thorne, author of the Tapestry of Worlds series, and I'm happy to be here today. Shay, how are you doing?
I'm not dead yet, so that's got to count for something.
Well, today we're going to be talking with the husband and wife research and writing team of Joey and Tonya Madia. Together, they have co-authored 2 books on the paranormal, Roommates from Beyond, How to Live in a Haunted Home, and Watch Out for the Hallway, their 2-year investigation into the most haunted library in North Carolina. They also co-host a weekly live stream called Into the Outer Realms.
They're not just accomplished together. Each has major accomplishments on their own. Tonya is an author, Reiki master, medium, certified hypnotist, yoga teacher, and spiritual life coach. She has been invited to investigate everything from private residences and cemeteries to retail stores and community centers, not to mention she wrote Living the Intuitive Life, Cultivating Extraordinary Awareness, and Self-Help Guide to help awaken your natural intuitive powers and abilities with ease. But I really need to read that one.
Well, I was looking over Joey's bio, and I can't wait to talk to him. When he is not investigating or writing about strange phenomena, he's a screenwriter, a playwright, a novelist, an actor, director, and escape room designer. His screenplay, The Man at the Foot of the Bed, is a paranormal thriller based on a true story. And the series he's currently working on, The Stanton Chronicles, combines history, mystery, and the paranormal.
I know we tend to go into the paranormal and the other side of the world, so to speak. I want to ask you about the escape rooms.
Yeah, please.
That's really cool. My wife and I absolutely love doing those. So
I about 5 years ago, I took a job as the creative director of a historical tour and education company on the Crystal Coast, so the southern Outer Banks of North Carolina. And the owner went out and did an escape room, and he was really hot on it. And he came back to me and said, do you think you could design one of these? And I took the approach of writing a thriller. A thriller screenplay or a thriller play, both of which I've done, and to do it in 3 acts, to have each act in a room, and to anchor all of the puzzles to the story very closely to drive the narrative, and then to use either audio or video characters, or when there's a budget and an opportunity, to use real live actors in the escape rooms. And I think they've been a big success.
Yes.
I even got the opportunity to consult this year for one of the world's leading luxury car makers who were doing an online escape room, an in-house project. Yeah, and then my big one this summer at the Mothman Museum in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, I've designed an escape room for them. So they're in the final stages of getting that ready.
that's cool.
Yeah, so Men in Black and John Keel, and I love marrying the fictional world and the paranormal world together. There's a neat kind of synergy there.
I totally agree. So, what is your connection with the Mothman Festival?
Oh, so we have presented a couple of different times. Tanya, you want to tell the story 2009, how we got invested in Point Pleasant?
Sure. So In 2007, we moved to West Virginia from New Jersey, and we had, just prior to our move, we had for the first time seen the movie The Mothman Prophecies with Richard Gere, Laura Linney. We loved the movie. And so when we got to West Virginia, I was curious how close we were to Point Pleasant because I couldn't wait to go check it out. And to my delight, I discovered that we were only a few hours away and they had a Mothman museum. Joey, on the other hand, wasn't as keen on it as I was. And he was like, I'm not driving 3 hours to go see something called the Mothman Museum. So it took me a couple of years to finally talk him into it. So in 2009, in August of 2009, we headed down to Point Pleasant for the weekend. We were immediately taken by the small town. I mean, it's Main Street, USA. And it was just like taking a step back in time, like 40, 50 years. It was just the way that it probably looked in the 1960s. So we did check out the Mothman Museum, and they gave us a map for what's called the TNT area, which is an area which is now a wildlife preserve, just about 15 minutes outside of town. And that's where the initial sighting of the Mothman took place, and subsequently other sightings. So we were going to go down there and check it out, but we stopped in this other little shop before doing so. And the shop owner there was a gentleman by the name of Bob. And he was kind of, we always joke, he was like a mix between Johnny Cash and Elvis, basically.
Oh, he
And
sounds awesome.
he was so
He was.
awesome.
He passed away several years ago, but Bob was. He had a pack of Marlboros rolled up in his T-shirt sleeve. I mean, he was cool.
He was awesome. And he saw that we had the map from the museum, and he was like, no, let me show you where you want to go. So he kind of spelled it all out for us. And he had indicated that there was some belief that that particular area was previously Indian burial grounds. And, we wanted to make sure to pay proper respect. So we purchased some sage to leave as an offering. Anyway, we headed over there, and as I mentioned, it was only about 15 minutes from downtown. So we left Bob's shop around 2:30 in the afternoon. We get out to the wildlife preserve, totally beautiful, blue skies, nature everywhere. But yet we felt really strange. We felt as if we were being watched. We felt very uneasy. And there are these igloos out there where people report having, strange experiences and whatnot. And we were too
Frightened.
Yeah, for lack of a better word, we were just too afraid to go inside the igloos. Joey actually got nauseous.
Really?
At the
Yeah,
entrance.
it's in subsequent years. I'll let Tonya finish the story, but in subsequent years, we've been there many, many times, and what I've learned as an investigator for me is my body is a very highly attuned EMF meter. So if there's any high spectrum activity going on, I get it right in my solar plexus. Sometimes to the point of dry heaving if it's a really heavy haunting. But anyway, so we hightailed out of there.
So yeah, we couldn't have been there more than 15 minutes. And as I mentioned before, it's 15 minutes there. We were there for 15 minutes. We're driving back into town, and we're both just kind of talking about, wasn't that kind of weird? Like, it's a beautiful day, it's a beautiful place, and yet we felt so uneasy, and how strange that was. And just at that moment, a figure, and we're on a two-lane road, it's Route 62, heading back into Point Pleasant. Just at that moment, a humanoid figure just appeared, manifested out of nowhere on the berm of the left-hand side of the road, leapt in a single bound in front of our car, landed on the right-hand side of the road, and then just vanished. Didn't leave, it just blinked out of existence. And we turned to each other at the same time and said, did you just see that? And it happened so quickly that had we not both seen it at the same time, we probably would have dismissed it as a trick of the eye or our imagination. But we decided that what we would do is once we got back into town, we would draw it independently and talk about what we saw. We did, however, want to stop by Bob's shop, and because he said, if you guys, if anything happens, if you see anything, let me know. So of course we head straight back to his shop. And so at this point, it should be in the neighborhood of about 45 minutes that has elapsed. And
So it should be about 3:15.
Should be about 3:15. We get to Bob's shop and it's closed and he's nowhere to be found. And we're standing there scratching our heads like, I wonder why, maybe he closed early, whatever. Well, he was actually in the back of the shop and had seen us. So he came and opened the door. And we at that time realized it was after 5. And that's why his shop was closed. So we were missing, over 2 hours of time.
Wow.
Yeah. So word got around what we saw. People wondered if it was the Mothman. We didn't think that it was. And investigators like Rosemary Ellen Guiley became very interested in what happened. So we met them on several occasions and retraced the route. And there were some weird things.
Mm-hmm.
We clearly remembered a cornfield on either side. It was near a cornfield. It jumped into a cornfield. The cornfield on the right was there. There's a house on the left. Property, nicely manicured. No way that there was a cornfield there 3 months before. I remembered a gas station that didn't exist. The amount of time it felt like to get there, to get back to Point Pleasant from the TNT area after the sighting was way too long. And that really created a relationship that's been, we've spoken at the festival several times. We've been involved in other projects there, have spoken about it so many times in the past decade, met a lot of investigators. It's how we became paranormal investigators. And then it wasn't until last November that we underwent regression hypnosis therapy and found out that we had actually been abducted for some psychological experiments by things that looked an awful lot like gray aliens and a thing that was Mothman-like. But Tonya, I don't think it was the Mothman.
Mm-mm. No, we still don't think we encountered the Mothman. And
No.
It's so bizarre, even for me, like, even to hear Joey say it now, almost a year later, it's like, after the regression, it's like, I don't know, it's just so strange.
It's
and
bizarre.
Yet we both independently were regressed, and we didn't have exactly the same because at one point we were separated, but what came out for both of us under regression was pretty much the same thing.
Wow, that's incredible. How did you feel when you got out of the regression?
Embarrassed. By this time we have 2 books out. Our second book had just come out. We were gaining a reputation as paranormal investigators. Rosemary Ellen Guiley had really taken us under her wing. We had been doing this for 10 years. And I was like, now on top of everything else, the ghosts and the spirits and everything else we do, now we're going to tell people that we were abducted by gray aliens and some other kind of, winged dark figure. So I was really embarrassed and didn't know what to do with it. And so we were re-debuting our show. We had left our original producers and had gone out on our own with Into the Outer Realms. And we just decided to do an episode about it. And then an artist had done sketches of what we had seen. And we have gotten 0 pushback on it, which is wonderful. It just shows you where the field is now, that we can talk about these things openly.
Well, that's one of the things that, I try to remind people is the Navy, the Army, everyone's coming out now and verifying the fact that UFOs and aliens are a reality. It's not something that you should be ashamed of anymore. And it's a reality of the world we're living in. I hate that you felt that way because, like I said, it's the new norm. Not the abduction, obviously.
Right.
But the fact that, they're here and things are happening. And I had honestly believed that when, and I just giggle every time I say Space Force because I think of Spaceballs, but when, the fact that Space Force got created was validation to me that there's a reason we need one.
Yes. And for me, I felt similar to Joey, but also at the same time, I felt somewhat validated, similarly to the way that I did when I first read Whitley Strieber's Communion. Because in Communion, he talks about a lot of experiences that are just like kind of waking up and there are bruises that are unaccounted for, or your feet are dirty and there's no way to explain it. Or he talks about some injuries that he sustained inside his nasal passages. And these were things that I had experienced periodically throughout my lifetime. And I would joke, like I never really fully felt like, oh, I think I'm being abducted. But I would joke, oh, I think the aliens got me last night. But after reading Communion, and then you probably know that after Communion came out, Whitley Strieber and his wife Anne received thousands of letters from people who were like, well, I had such, similar experiences to what you reported. So after we did the regression, and after having read Whitley Strieber's book, for me, it was like, okay, I really think there is something here.
Definitely. And I know that y'all had mentioned Rosemary Ellen Guiley, and I just wanted to get a little heads up of maybe background on who that is, because I'd never heard of her before today.
Rosemary was the author of 65 books on the paranormal. She was often on television shows. Her last project was Paranormal Caught on Camera, season 1. Before she got sick. She passed away. It's coming up on 2 years.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Although she's still around. It's amazing how many, there's at least half a dozen people that we know who do this work who are visited by Rosemary. So it's not just, it would be awkward if it was just Tonya and I, and she works very closely with Tonya, and she excuse me, she helps us with our outlines and with our work and with her progression. But she wrote, she really made her bones, I believe, in the 1980s with a series of encyclopedias. But she was on so many documentaries. She was an expert on the jinn, on dreaming, scrying mirrors,
angels. A
A
lot of her early work was around angels, fairies.
Just a lot of integrity and a nice person. So if you had an interest in the paranormal, she was like a rock star of the paranormal world.
It sounds like I was looking at her background, and I saw interdimensional entity contact experiences, problem haunting, spirit and entity attachment. I mean, she sounds like the go-to person. And you said that she trained you to experience these things or to understand your abilities. I'm just curious.
Yeah, definitely.
There was that, but really her primary was we're investigators in her mold. A lot of respect for the spirits and ghosts. We're not ghost hunters. We're paranormal investigators. We go into a situation not to try to get the elusive EVP or get the spectral image on camera. And we've been fortunate enough to get those things, but it's about helping people, the living and the dead, being mediators. That's our second book, Roommates from Beyond, How to Live in a Haunted Home. And Rosemary was, she was a very stern teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, she took this very seriously. And if you made a mistake or you messed up, she let you know it if you weren't being your best. And then after she passed, so many people came to us and said, Rosemary just thought the world of you too. And it wasn't like she wasn't nice to us. I mean, she spent a lot of time at our house. She helped our daughter, who's a psychic medium, but she was really the one who taught us the nuts and bolts of how to use the equipment, how to use the ability, how to interview, how to investigate. And we really try to carry on her legacy, which we take very seriously.
Absolutely.
So what do you feel is the distinction between a ghost hunter and a paranormal investigator?
Sure. So ghost hunters, from our standpoint, when you're hunting something, sorry, my chair just fell. When you're hunting something, it's as if, they're the prey and you're the predator. And that is not our perception at all. We really want to help facilitate healing and transition, again, for both the living and the dead. So we want to know, what is this story? Why is this haunting occurring? Why is this activity occurring? What can we do to help? How can we help, the deceased, if they would like to cross over? How can we help facilitate that? And also, how can we help the living? Because a lot of times we're called in by people who are very sensitive themselves, and they've had lifelong experiences, and they really don't understand, why do I continue to have these experiences? So we help them understand that they're not crazy, that they are very just sensitive and tuned into these things, and then help them, learn how to utilize those abilities.
Okay.
So it sounds like y'all are, in a way, like psychopops.
Tonya definitely is. Rosemary would say that because in Roommates from Beyond, a major part of the book is that the last 6 or 7 homes we've lived in have been haunted. We've just come to realize that everything is haunted. Spirits and ghosts are everywhere. It's frequency. It's non-local consciousness. Science is really catching up with that. Neurology and psychology and even biology, chemistry, looking at the spectrum and the super spectrum, as far as energies and vibrations and frequencies. In a couple of weeks on our show, Tonya and I are doing a presentation on Tesla and how his work and theories involve the paranormal. We believe so strongly in all of this that we've written what we believe is the world's first paranormal Bill of Rights. So it's in the new book, Roommates from Beyond, because some people are very happy to have ghosts and spirits in their home, and the ghosts and spirits are very happy to be there. So you don't have to cross everything over. You certainly don't have to have an exorcism. And we found that this perception through reality television, sort of through the pop culture paranormal, is that everything's a demon and they're pretending to be human, but they're really demons and they're going to destroy your life. And we've experienced that relatively little. Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah, I think that you're right on the money with that. There seems to be, and in doing the research that I've done on psychics or psychic ability, so to speak, one of the things that just was outstanding to me was the fact that, there was a time when we trusted our psychic people, when we relied on them for decision making, when they helped us. And even, I guess it was around the burning times, it seemed like there was a big shift in that, and people were afraid to be psychic from then on, because obviously, you don't want to get burned or drowned or whatever the, authorities were doing to the people in your area. But since then, people seem to be afraid of it. And the Romans had the Delphi oracle that they went to help them make decisions. It's just a crazy thing to me that something that was so trusted for thousands of years is now something that we look upon with trepidation.
You're so right. And that's what my book, Living the Intuitive Life, Cultivating Extraordinary Awareness, is really about. We're all born with these abilities. Some people to varying degrees, just like some people are born with more natural athletic ability. Some people have more musical ability and whatnot. But we all have these abilities. And unfortunately, from a young age, children very frequently can see the deceased. Their grandparents are around them, their loved ones are around them. And people even notice that, oh, it looks like the baby's playing with someone, but we don't see anyone there. And then as children grow, their parents kind of poo-poo it and dismiss it and tell them that their experience of the world is not real, that it's their imagination. And that's when we learn to kind of tune out these abilities that we have and think it's our imagination and doubt ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love about the work that we do, is that we can help people relearn how to use these natural abilities that we all have.
Well, I commend what you're doing, because like Gracie and I did a show. It started off to be about the Stargate project. And it ended up being just about the psychic phenomenon, because it kept coming up time and time again. The U.S. government alone has spent, millions of taxpayers' money on psychic programs, and the only thing they've decided is that people are psychic.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's a degree. Some people are Beethoven. Some people, they're just natural with it. They can hear, they're born knowing how to do things, and it's fine tuning those instruments. And it's just amazing. And I do see that people like you are really making strides and making it more acceptable today.
Well, thank you. That's really for us. So to kind of go back to the difference between, ghost hunting and investigating, for us, that's it. It's not about proving anything in terms of the existence of consciousness, after the death of the physical body. We already know that that's the case from our experience. We're not interested in proving that to anyone. We just want to help. And we want to help people understand that very often the experience that they think is just in their head is a real experience that they're having.
It's nice to know you're not the Mr. Reality TV guy that goes into a haunting and yells at ghosts and spirits and then freaks out when he actually meets one.
Exactly.
Right. We comment on that all the time. I'm interested in the story. I'm sure that's no surprise to you guys reading, my bio. Tonya's a very, very talented psychic medium. Our daughter is. And as we got more into this, it was really my curiosity. We had that experience. Our houses were haunted. Between Tonya and Jolie, they are such psychic batteries that we had portals where we lived. Either I believe we were just always kind of drawn subconsciously to properties that have portals, that have that energy, and we interpret that energy as a good thing. And I said, I don't know, I don't just want to play with the equipment. Like, I don't want to be the equipment guy. I don't want to be the tech guy. So what do I bring to this? And working with Rosemary, and as we developed, spirits and ghosts have stories, and it's amazing to unfold those stories through history, through the equipment, through the psychic mediums. I like to triangulate data. So if we get the sensitives and the medians seeing or hearing something, the history of the property, the history of the home, the personalities of the families, and the dynamics that we're gathering from our interviews of them and collecting the case history, and then what the equipment is telling us. If we get that EVP, or we get that communication through the voice box, if we get, an orb that is a legitimate orb on the camera, things of that nature, we're always trying to replicate any kind of phenomena. So I call it CAP, CAP, conditional anomalous phenomena. So everything is mundane until we prove it isn't. I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan. I'm writing my first Sherlock Holmes novel right now. I'm almost done with the first draft. And it's this idea that only after you've eliminated all the possibilities, what's left, that kind of hopefully tells you what it is. So those are the things. If there's anything about reality TV, the nature of entertainment, and I'm an entertainer, so I get it. You can't show the hours and hours of wearing the headphones, listening to 6 hours of audio, hoping to get 3 seconds of something that might be a communication. So people grab the gear and go out and oftentimes get themselves in trouble. And we've been called in to bail people out who have gotten themselves in trouble.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Would you care to share a story?
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I think this is instructive because it hits a lot of boxes. So when we were, Shay, you expressed interest in our 2-year investigation of the web. So let's go there now. So for 2 years, we did this investigation. We were super lucky. It's a very, very haunted site for a number of factors we could go into if there's time. But we got to go in there 75 nights over the course of 2 years with over 500 people over the course of that time, guest investigators. and 150 hours we spent in there. And I actually think that it was probably more. Yeah, and to watch the ghosts and spirits, their personalities change, and watch energies change, and go to MUFON and New Fork after we see an interdimensional being, and a week later on MUFON, a half a mile from the library, someone is independently reporting a UFO sighting. We encountered spectral MIBs. It was crazy. It was very, very neat. But while we were in there, we really learned how to do things correctly, and to find out about these things. And yeah, the web.
Yeah,
very
we
cool.
got the opportunity because the previous, did you
Go
touch
ahead.
on that? The previous investigators got so frightened one night that they just
left the doors
away.
and ran out, and they had shut it down. And we said, well, we can do this thing. So there was someone who was very, very into what we were doing at the web. And so they wanted to create their own ghost hunting team. So they buy all of this equipment and they get their first case. And it's a little old lady, and she has a house, and I guess the previous occupant is still in the house, and it's freaking out her cat, and it's freaking out her cleaning lady. And so these people go, okay, so we're going to go in and we're going to banish this ghost to the void. We're going to exorcise it from the house. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm like, have you done research? Have you find out who could it be? They haven't done anything. They made the cat a little nervous, and they freaked out the cleaning lady. So I was like, you need to slow down. You really need to think about this. Like, if you think about it this way, and this is what we always do as a teaching technique, think about ghosts and spirits as living people. Some are nasty, some are nice, some are sad, some are a little crazy. But if you had a neighbor that moved into your neighborhood, and say they were playing their music late at night, or they were a little weird and they were freaking you out a little, you wouldn't like try to get them evicted in the first week. You wouldn't set their house on fire. So, so when people are like, we're going to banish this, we're going to do an exorcism tonight, you watch Facebook and you see these ghost hunting groups, and they're like, all right, tonight we're going into this house, man. It's our third exorcism this week. No, I don't think so. So what had happened was they were really committed, but they showed up, and the woman was so nervous, the woman who had brought them in, that she had had a little too much to drink. And they were wise enough to know that alcohol and this kind of work do not go together well. And we were really able to talk to them and say, you really should try to communicate with this person. That's why we created the Paranormal Bill of Rights, because you guys live in a house, in a apartment, whatever it is, wherever you live. If you were to die, you might still have an attachment to that place. Someone who's lived someplace at decades, or their furniture and all was still in there. People sometimes get in trouble with estate sales because the people stay around because all their stuff is there. So we've done some cases with that. So we try to just think about it in terms of, if they were human once, we can still treat them like human beings. And that's really going to inform our approach.
I think that's beautiful, and it's so smart. It just brings an air of acceptance and tolerance that I think you're right, people don't do. I guess we should be more respectful to the dead. In a lot of ways, we've kind of forgotten that.
Yeah, I
Did
think.
you go ahead? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shay. I was just going to say, I think a lot of it is just in the name of entertainment, for entertainment's sake. With a lot of these shows, they're looking to make it look exciting and terrifying and whatever. And then in that gets lost the fact that, yeah, these are essentially people without bodies who have a story, they're here for a reason. They need something. Usually, they need a little help or a little guidance just so that they can make their transition over.
That's very
would you
true.
be willing to go into a little more detail on this Bill of Rights that you have created?
Oh, yeah. So Did you grab the books like I asked?
I didn't.
Okay, so I'm just going to step away for just 1 second, but if you want to introduce it.
Yeah, so while we were writing Roommates from Beyond, Joey really was the one that came up with the idea, and he wondered, I wonder if anyone's kind of codified a philosophy in terms of the proper way to really step in and offer assistance and show respect. And so he did some research and found that nobody had. And he thought, well, you know what, we should write this, and we're going to call it the Paranormal Bill of Rights. And so we sat down and sort of came up with our philosophy in an outline structure, and then we shared it with many of our colleagues in the paranormal field and got a little bit of input. And they sometimes would, well, why don't you change this word here or whatever? So we got some input, and then we put it together.
I'll give you a couple if you'd like.
Sure, please.
Okay, so number 1 is entities and haunted locations are not specimens or attractions to be examined or disturbed at our whim, for our amusement, or to satisfy our curiosity. 2, we ask permission before we enter the space inhabited by an entity or entities. 3, it is not our place to use the tools of our trade to poke, prod, and invade the psychic bodies and minds of entities.
Okay, that's really cool.
That is really cool.
I like that a lot.
Thank you, Shay.
Thank you.
It's catching on. More and more people are talking about it. I think that, like any kind of field, over time, people train other people. Shay, you go back to the Vikings, so we're getting, trade guilds and learning and apprentice and journeymen and masters, and I think all that stuff kind of began around that time and really, right, went in the Middle Ages, and I love that. The fact that we got to be mentored by one of the leading people in the field for a decade was just wonderful. So all of this stuff, I believe, is floating out there in the ether. There's nothing in the Paranormal Bill of Rights that's new, but because my mind, I'm a very systems oriented, I like to engineer things. I just wanted to try to gather it all and bleed it all down into something that it's in the book twice. It's on a one-sided page in the back of the book. So you could tear it out and put it in your field kit. Take it with you as paranormal investigators. We certainly do, and we adhere to it. And it's a good way. We've taken our lumps, especially in the web. There were mistakes that we made, and no one got seriously hurt, which was we were lucky for that. But it's a way to kind of debrief ourselves after an investigation and say, did we do this the right way? Did we adhere to our own beliefs? Because there's a lot of people watching and listening now for all of us. So we need to do the best we can and be consistent.
And respectful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot. That's amazing. So thank you.
For that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I definitely, I share our information with a local metaphysical group, so I'm going to make sure that they know about the Paranormal Bill of Rights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It sounds, I mean, I love everything y'all are into. It's just great. So we've talked about Mothman. We've talked about your paranormal stuff. And I always, my question I love to ask everyone is, in the process of your research, what have you learned that has changed your opinion about everything you knew previous to learning it?
Oh, that's a great question. You want to go first?
Wow. Boy, there's so many things. You know what? I think I'm going to circle back. For me, I'd like to circle back to when you mentioned Project Stargate earlier. And that really opened my eyes a lot because I was researching and learning a lot about that right around the time that I like to joke and say, coming out of the closet as a medium. Because, I was one of those people who dismissed what I was experiencing as my imagination. I didn't want to be called a medium. It was really Rosemary who said, just get over it. That's what you are. you know. So I was very fascinated with the types and the extent of the experiments and the research that our government, funded, and quite extensively, as you mentioned. And it's really amazing to me that after all the years and all the money that was put into that it still isn't mainstream. It is getting more so now, as you mentioned, but that was really eye-opening to me. And just the the fact that we really do all have these sensing systems as part of our body, just the way that animals can smell fear and smell emotion. We maybe don't smell it, but we have a way to tune into those energy signals and pick up on them. In fact, Ingo Swann, who was, part of the Stargate project and the father of remote viewing, said, we don't just have 5 senses. We have, sensing systems all throughout our body. We have receptors in our skin, in our fingers, and our feet. And it's so true. So I think for me, that was probably a real eye-opener.
That gave me time to think. So I can be very succinct. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
For me, it was ghosts and spirits. And I was like, Bigfoot and cryptids, I don't know. Aliens, UFOs are kind of boring. Okay, ships in the sky, lights, whatever. But really, I've gotten to the point now, I'm working on a book that I hope is going to come out in 2022. I've had to put it aside for some other things we're working on, but it's called Parallels and Patterns, My Lifelong Quest for Answers. And I've really gotten to the place now where I think all of these things are so intimately connected. There's a core phenomena. It has something to do with quantum physics, the core principles of quantum physics, the way space-time breaks down, multiverse theory, non-local consciousness. Tesla said everything is frequency and vibration and energy. And I believe that. So now that Tonya and I have gotten to where John Keel had gotten by the early 1970s, we know that these things exist. That's no longer what this is about for us. We want to know what's behind it and how does it work? How do we participate in it? Because we all do. One thing we've learned in working on dozens of cases is that the living create the conditions for a haunting almost as much as the deceased do.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Oftentimes,
I like that. Thank you. Oftentimes, when we go into a case, the family is in turmoil. And especially if there are dark entities, whatever these might be, shadow people or jinn or hat man or demons, they're all different names for something that was never human and feeds on our lower chakras, our lower energy centers, fear, anxiety, dissension. They pick up on these things, but then they create conditions to get more of it. It's kind of like psychic vampires. It's part of that whole phenomena, I believe. So that's really where I'm at now, and that's changed everything for me. That's changed everything for me.
Well, I can't wait to read your book because I'm all about parallels and patterns. And I have to point this out, Shay. This kind of ties in with that interview we did with Joshua on Sunday.
The same thing.
We did an interview with Joshua Cutchins the other day, and he does a lot of, he looks into folklore and finds parallels between a lot of the mythologies and legends with the alien and Bigfoot phenomenon. So if you haven't had a chance to research Joshua, Joey, I would say do it. He has some very, very, very in-depth research that he's done.
Very compelling research as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I've looked quite a bit into through Jacques Vallée's Passage to Magonia, the overlaps between alien abductions and classic fairy stories from around the world.
Yes, yeah.
And that's a lot of what Joshua's research talks about.
The experiences that are recorded from history of people, what happens to people when they step through a fairy ring, are very similar to what happens when people are sucked up by the little gray men. So
Yep.
it's really cool theories, if not fact. I can't speak to either side of that, but it's really cool either way. So
Yeah, and I'm feeling like this accumulating parallels and patterns, which, I'm sure Joshua talked about it. It's just hours and hours over years and years of doing the research, reading the books, collecting the case histories firsthand, going to the places and making your own assessments, taking readings, being on site, going to libraries and historical societies. I'm going to listen to him on your podcast and then do some reading in his work. Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you, it was really interesting. A lot of the stuff that he talks about is stuff I put into my book, so I'd already researched it. So when I heard the work that he was doing, I was really interested in learning more. And he's fascinating. We didn't even scratch the surface. And I can say that it's a very similar to what I feel like we're doing today. Is there's no way I can talk with y'all about everything I want to talk to you about. But
it seems more rambling than covering anything.
well, that's the great thing about these great conversations that we're having is I feel like I'm learning so much, and
Well,
just
my time has been full of research now, thanks to this podcast. So
Nice. And that's usually the way it is for me. We're very lucky to do our show Into the Outer Realms and get to sit for an hour and a half with a guest and learn what's going on with them in real time and again collect their stories. What was your earliest experience? We typically ask, what bridged you from experiencer to researcher, and those things are always very, very fascinating to me.
definitely. And Tonya, to go back to your experience with the Stargate stuff, I'm going to tell you one of the things that I found out is that it originally was Project Paperclip, I believe, and then it was Stargate. It is still going on. They just continually change the names. They're still doing the research. The latest research I heard that they were doing was research into soldiers who have like that premonition of something about to explode or happen in warfare. And that
Yeah.
was something they were really interested in trying to figure out how to tap into that. So
Yeah, and I have read that as well, that they just, change the name and sort of send it deeper deeper classified.
well, it's really fascinating stuff. Like I said, that it's not a matter of if people are psychic, it's a matter of what can we do with this.
Right. And the number one thing that I always tell people is just trust. Just trust, when you get that instinct, when you have that feeling, if you think, a lot of times people have been seeing, as I was seeing spirit pretty much their whole life, but they were dismissing it because you see it in your mind's eye for the most part. Some people like Joey, when he does see spirit, he sees it out there with his eyeballs. I don't. I see it in my mind's eye. So I dismissed it for most of my life. And that's generally how it is. So people dismiss it. So if you think you're seeing something, trust it and then see if you can get cooperation from somebody else. That's how I really started to cultivate my ability. Is I would see a spirit person, I wouldn't say anything, and I would be in the company. I had the fortune to be in the company of other mediums, and I would wait and see if they mentioned, and they would, and they'd say, oh, I'm seeing a guy and here's how he's dressed or whatnot. And that would be exactly what I was seeing. So over time, I was able to get that feedback and that validation so that I could trust.
That sounds good. Do you do any classes or help people learn how to tap into their abilities?
I do. Thank you. I do workshops and I work with people one-on-one. To help them. And that's the spiritual life coaching that I do. I have many clients that I've worked with to help them, understand what their abilities are first. And we can figure out what are your stronger abilities, what are the ones you want to work on. And then we just work together to develop them.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to need to get the link because I want to put that in our show notes so people can contact you about that.
Thank you.
And tell us more about your podcast.
So Into the Outer Realms airs Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern on Facebook. It's also on YouTube, on Joey's channel. Every day is a story all its own. And we really have a good time. Tomorrow night, we have Nicole Strickland, who is a paranormal investigator and researcher and author, who we were connected with by Rosemary Ellen Guiley after she passed, because Rosemary was a very good friend of Nicole's and, also a friend of ours, and found a way to connect us from Beyond the Veil. So we're really excited about it. But Nicole's been investigating the Queen Mary for many, many years. So she'll be our guest tomorrow night. And then after she's on, we're going to be on her podcast. So, but yeah, you can find us at Into the Outer Realms on Facebook.
And again, I'm going to put all this in the show notes so everyone should be able to find it.
Thank
Well,
you.
it sounds
Thank
like
you.
y'all have some interesting things coming up with the Tesla episode. And what else are y'all focusing on coming up?
So we have I won't call it a side project, but we do an episode on it every 6 weeks or so, and then we research in between. But we have a group called the Red Thread Collective, or the RTC, and it's a diverse group of it's sensitives, it's hardcore researchers, some experiencers. It's a really, really nice mix of people, and we pick a topic. So our first one was Denver International Airport and the Georgia Guidestones. Our
That's
second
a good one.
Yeah, and our second one was Mysteries of Nevada and New Mexico. So Dulce Base, Area 51, S4, Bob Lazar, Janet Airlines, all of that. And then July 22nd, we have an episode coming up on Antarctica.
Ooh.
Yeah, right. That's such a cool place, and to do it in the middle of July, like the hottest part of the summer, and we're going to be nice and cool talking about Antarctica. So we call them fringe theories because the C word has gotten such a bad rap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're just and we're not looking to prove or debunk anything. Like that's not our thing. We just look at everything and we compare notes and we kind of say, do you think there's something going on here? What are the parallels and patterns? And it's really nice to have 6 or 7 team members who are all bringing their research and their take on the research into the pot. And we don't talk about it beforehand. We create an outline just so we know what the big topic hit points are, but we don't talk about details, and it's worked out very well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it sounds like my kind of thing. I'm going to look that up.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
It's all the stuff that we love to talk about.
Yeah.
Birds aren't real.
Birds aren't real.
Every episode.
That's so fun. No, I was going to say, I would really like to, for one of those episodes, cover the Mandela effect. And I know it's been done to death by so many people, but I'm just so fascinated by that topic.
Well, that's the great thing about these topics is whenever you have a different group of people, you come up with different ideas and different theories. So keep doing it.
Thank you. Yeah. And you got to pick next. So we're announcing it on your show after Antarctica. It's going to be the Mandela effect. So you got an exclusive, guys.
Mandela. I think I said Mandela. But
Yeah, it's
I meant
Mandela.
to say Mandela.
Yeah, Nelson Mandela. So, which is it's another piece of the puzzle. Like how do the Bible passages I find very fascinating because I have Bibles that are not centuries, decades old, almost 100 years old. I have a Bible, and certain passages are not as I remember them, being a lifelong Catholic. So there's definitely something there.
Well, like I said, I could talk to y'all forever. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our hour. So is there anything, what current projects are you working on besides your podcast?
Oh, so I'm writing Parallels and Patterns, my lifelong quest for answers, and that should come out in 2022.
And I am working on a project with Rosemary. She's been mentoring me again from Beyond the Veil, giving me instructions on different types of meditations to do, different people to reach out to, and giving me outlines. And so there's a book that she wanted me to write before she passed, and she keeps nudging me from beyond to write a book on dowsing. So I've been working on that as well.
Oh, that I love to learn about dowsing. You'll have to keep me up to date on that. Ley lines are something I'm completely fascinated by, and I know that you can find them using a dowsing rod. So
yeah, and then our big project, let's say our 3-year project, is to start a research and training facility. Most likely we'll start it online, and then we'll travel. We'd like to get a Ford Transit van and put a bed in the back, kind of trick it out and get on the road and do presentations and workshops, but then also have people study online. So we're doing grant writing now, which is time consuming and a little tedious. And
yeah, definitely keep me in the loop on that, because I've actually been approached by, I have a lady, she's a shaman and a Reiki master that I work with on doing some grant writing to try and get a center started here. So definitely keep me updated on that. I'd definitely be interested in talking more about it.
Oh,
terrific.
Yeah,
That's great that all these things are happening. I think it's wonderful.
Definitely. Now, if you could please tell our listeners where they can find you online.
Sure. So I have a website. It's Tonya, Tonya Madia, Madia.com, TonyaMadia.com. I'm also on Facebook. It's Tonya Madia Medium. And of course, Into the Outer Realms. I'm also on Instagram. I don't do Twitter, but Joey does, and he can tell you about that.
Yeah, so please follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram under Joey Madia. And also I have a Joey Madia professional page if you want to keep up with my novels, my historic enacting, my film projects, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, Joey, we're going to have you come back and just talk fiction one day, because you've got so much going on with your series. I'd love to talk more
I would
about that.
love that. I would so love that. Thank you.
That's going to do it for us today, guys. You can find me at Hadley Thorne. If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't already done it, please hit that like button. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our monthly 3 to 5 uploads. Wyrd Realities can be found on all social media using Linktree /Wyrd Realities.
We will have the Media's books and contact links posted in the show's notes so you can locate them. Until next time, you can find me at Shay_Tully on Twitter. Thanks for coming out, guys. We enjoyed this thoroughly.
Thank you. We
Thank you,
sure did
guys.
too.
We had so much fun.
That's going to do it, guys. Wyrd Realities has some great programming coming up, so be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and set your notifications to alert you when we upload new content. Until next time, you can find me on Twitter at Shay_Tully, and you can find Hadley at all the usual places at Hadley Thorne. And you can stay up to date to all of our stuff via Linktree /Wyrd Realities. Till next time, stay weird.